Let's talk Swift optionals. An optional is Swift's way of handling an absence of a value safely. In Swift, the key word to describe the absence of a value is nil. Think of it as a placeholder that says there's nothing here. It looks like this. So this is an example of an optional string. You would denote an optional with this question mark here. So this is saying a string that might or might not contain a value. And this would be an optional value with no value, so it being nil. Because it's an optional, you have to handle that absence of a value gracefully, and we'll go over how to do that. The first way you can handle an optional is using an if-let. So you can unwrap the optional. So name is an optional. You can see that here with the string and a question mark. So you're saying with the if-let, you're saying if we can unwrap this name into an unwrapped name property, then use it. Otherwise, you know that it's absent or nil, and you're going to print this instead. So you're handling the absence of a value this way. So now this would no longer be an optional. This would be of type string. And newer versions of Swift actually let you write it this way. So you can just say if-let name. It knows that you're trying to unwrap that name into another variable called name, but now this name is no longer optional and you can use it here. Another way to unwrap an optional is using a guard. Here you see I've used the same shorthand, guard let name, but this can also look like this. A guard is handy because it makes the code cleaner. So instead of having everything nested one statement in, you can just do an early exit and you can use that unwrapped optional anywhere further down the line. So this exact same code with an if-let would look like this. See how now the code is like indented, and I try to use guard statements if I can before I use an if-let. Another way to unwrap an optional is using nil coalescing. The nil coalescing is this double question mark operator, and this just says if there's a value, use that value. If there isn't a value, use this. So it's saying if name is nil, then use guessed. So right now it's printing hi Harry Potter, but if I make this nil, let's see what happens. Now it's printing hi guessed. That's because name was nil, and it's defaulting to this value. The last thing I want to show you is optional chaining. What optional chaining does is a way to access nested optionals. For example, let's say you have a user, and inside of that user struct, there's a profile property that can also be optional. So here, you'll see that optional chaining. That's basically this question mark dot whatever property is inside that optional struct or optional object. This is handy because this means that bio is never going to be accessed if profile is nil. And this is a safe way to access properties inside of optionals, because otherwise the app can crash if I had an exclamation point here. This exclamation point is a force unwrap. That means I am expecting this optional to have a value. If there is no value, the app will crash. And like I've said before, you don't want crashes in production. This question mark is a safe way to access those optional properties without causing crashes. I hope you learned something today, and I'll see you next time.